Greetings and good Monday morning, the 28th of November, 2022, third decade of the 21st century. If for some reason you're new to my channel and you're curious as to why I say things like that, it's mainly to basically, how do I put this, highlight the stark contrast between where people predicted we would be as a society and where we currently are as a society. Also, as part of my channel, I like to read responses out loud and react and respond to them in real time. That being said, I don't want to ignore the obvious. I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. I hope everybody had a relatively drama free Thanksgiving. Uh, I could say that mine was drama free, and then I could also probably say that there was a little bit of drama. It just depends on perspective, right? That being said, once again, I hope everybody got through the holiday. If you decided to brave the Black Friday shopping, hopefully you got through it all right. With that being said, I'd like to get straight into it. I have a response from my one true loyal viewer and responder, Stace Catalan, and it's in regards to my age and labels video. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So the first comment is age. I have a half brother 20 years younger than me. When I dated, I always had a rule on age that anyone I had dated couldn't be so young that I could have babysat them when they were born or old enough to babysit me when I was born. I constantly look up celebrities for ages, and I get the same reaction when I feel like I need to repent for looking at them in the in that way. And I'm an atheist, laugh out loud. Oh, I get it. And that was part of the reason I brought it up. Um, so yeah, Stace, it sounds like you're on the same page as my wife and I. There's something about having somebody in your life, like a relative, so to speak. For me, it was my two half sisters. For my wife, it was her niece. For you, it's your half brother. Yeah, I mean, 20 years is significant. I mean, that means your half brother was born in, correct me if I'm wrong, 96. Whew. I'd been in the Marine Corps for about 2 years by then. Wow. Wow. Yeah. No. Anyways, and for those playing catch up, um, my wife and I have two half sisters that are 12 and 16 years younger than me. My wife has a niece that's 11 years younger than her. And growing up, we had to watch over, take care of, you know, these individuals in our lives, you know, changing diapers, feeding, bathing, putting to bed sometimes, just things that I guess families do. And Stace, I guess, for the most part, agrees, where because of that age difference and some of the things that we had to do, I guess you could call them maternal or paternal. It's more or less ruined an entire age bracket. And the reason I also say that in a funny manner is because I don't know about anybody else, but I've also started to reach the age where, tragically speaking, I'm reaching the age where I can't enjoy certain stories anymore. Like when they created Riverdale, which was loosely based on the Archie comics, part of me was like, "Oh, cool!" And it was like, "Yeah, Skeet Ulrich is going to be in it. Luke Perry is going to be in it. Molly Ringwald and Machen Amick and people that I knew growing up." Um, but they were going to be cast as parental figures, and instead they were using some actors I knew, like Dylan Spurb. I could be saying that wrong. One of the twins from I know it. I know him as one of the twins from Big Daddy. That being said, it takes place in high school, which is where the Archie comics takes place, and obviously they chose actors and actresses that are easy on the eyes, attractive, and relatively age appropriate to play teenagers. Normally, they get young, very young adults to play teenagers. And I'm sure the women on the show are very attractive and the guys are probably equally attractive. But it was just so weird to think, oh my God, I'm, what's the age difference now? I am almost 29 years removed from high school. I'm getting to be that old now. So there's a lot of relating I can't do anymore. I think the last time I was able to relate to anything was possibly the first few seasons of One Tree Hill. That was probably the last time I could relate because I was still in my late 20s where high school was less than 10 years ago. So, yeah, it's just weird. And then you like, yeah, you look up these actors and actresses and it's like, oh, they were born in like my son wanted to watch the Hawkeye series on Disney Plus, and we did. And Florence Pugh and uh, who's the other girl? Not Haley Atwell, but oh, I can't remember her name. They're both very attractive young women. They're both full-blown grown women, but they were both born in 1996, and it's like, just yeah, I get it, Stace. So, and I'm curious to know if anybody else feels the same way. If it, you know if age is a thing, or if you have influences in your life where after a certain age it's like, I'll go one step further. uh, every once in a while, due to things that have happened in recently, we'll have that discussion of like, if something were to happen to one of us, could the other one move on? And if so, how? Like, so hypothetically speaking, if something happened, divorce or death, and I wound up single again, could I move on? And I don't know, because my youngest half sister is 34. She'll be 35 next year. That's a grown ass woman. I mean, that's a legitimate grown ass woman. That's cougar status, I think. And to me, it's still just a weird age bracket. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. But Stace, there's more. We have to move on. Okay. So on the other end of the topic, I brought up labels. Labels. Label. I needed the label of gender fluid because it finally let me seem validated for the body dysmorphia where I never felt truly a full woman nor feeling like I should be a man. I legally changed my name to feel closer to who I am. I am not as concerned with pronouns being incorrect because I know I present more feminine than how I feel. I think labels are more of a personal thing, but I can only speak for myself. When it comes to the Club Q shooting, it is important to identify the woman who helped to stop the gunman correctly. There is a difference between a drag queen and a trans woman. This is an important difference, I'm sure, for that woman. That is an example of the importance of an outside view to labels. Otherwise, I feel labels are more important individually and personally than an outside view. Okay. Um, Stace, thank you again for the response. Something I guess I'd like to highlight this point. On this particular singular issue, I think is where Stace and I have our most distinctive, I wouldn't call it a disagreement, but where we just differ. Um, I have some thoughts and opinions on the whole trans thing, body dysmorphia, that hopefully don't offend Stace. But when I've tried to bring it up in the past, other people, I guess, were more deeply connected to it, and it was way more important to them that They couldn't have an open conversation about it. The truth of the matter is, people as a species disagree with one another. People as a species just will never see eye to eye on everything. The difference, I think, is how we treat one another. The label thing is not a big issue to me. What bothers me is if I'm attempting to extend some civility, if I'm attempting to extend some humanity, if I'm attempting to be like, thank you, sir, thank you, ma'am, good evening, miss, good evening, ma'am, good evening, sir, good evening, mister, simple extensions of hospitality, simple extensions of civility, kindness, and courtesy, they shouldn't be slapped away because I didn't get your individually personalized label correct. All right. And I feel that there's an entire population of people out there, in what numbers I don't know, but I feel like there's a population of people out there that are looking for reasons to be offended. They're going out of their way and making a conscious effort to be offended by labels. And that was part of what I was trying to highlight. And, Stace, thank you so much for commenting, because I personally view your perspective as being very open, but also honest. A label means more to you than perhaps maybe it does a larger portion of the population. I kind of get the impression that you're also not looking to go out of your way to be offended and to make a scene and to create chaos and controversy when somebody legitimately extends you a courtesy that maybe doesn't quite fit how you feel. At least that's the impression I get. Maybe I'm wrong. And I also am not going to blame you if you've ever had one of those days where you're just on eggshells and just boom, you snap. I've had those days. I'm not going to fault anybody else for having those days. But I my interpretation is how you deeply feel, which could be the overall sum total of the life you've lived, the experiences you've had, the upbringing. I kind of sort of get the impression you're not exactly on the best terms with your immediate family. And you can comment on that if you want to. What I will say is this: I had a very awkward and unique relationship with my immediate family. Um, I was much closer to my grandmother than, say, my mother. I was much closer with my uncle than, say, my stepdad. Um, I had an estranged relationship for the longest time with my mom and with my stepdad, which eventually trickled down to my middle sister, who's 12 years younger. She eventually got to an age where she could pick up on the hostility, on the strained and estranged relationship, at least with her dad, and she used it to her advantage. And it's something that I've had a hard time getting over. It drove a wedge between us. And you can psychoanalyze it, you can say all the things you want to say. It is what it is. And the funny thing is, even in her 30s, not much has changed. She's still very introspective. She's still very selfish. She's still a lot of things. There's a lot of good in her, but there's just things about her that we're just not close. My youngest sister, we were very close when she was very young. But I joined the Marine Corps when she was 3 years old, and for 20 years I was in the Marine Corps. I very rarely, if ever, went home. So by the time I retired from the service, she was 23 a full-grown woman, graduated high school, kind of not what I would say set in her ways, but what's the best established as an individual, and she's not exactly somebody I really know. I mean, we're cool, we're okay. It's different, but I don't know. Maybe that's one of the downsides of the military. And the whole point of that is, I'm a big fan of who we are, how we operate, how we conduct ourselves is an accumulation of the sum total of our life experiences, the sum total of our decisions. And some of what I get out of Stace when I read your comments is who you are now is the culmination of the sum total of your experiences. And I want to say at one point you had expressed not an opinion, but you had expressed something about growing up in an extremely religious family, deeply religious family, where you yourself did not share those same convictions. And I wonder if in your own opinion it's had a direct effect on who you are and how you conduct yourself and how you operate. I can tell you, I think a lot of it's had an impact on how I father my children, but it is what it is. Getting back to the whole label thing, what I've recognized is this: some things may be very important to me that are not as important to others. I do not have to go out of my way to be accosted or offended if somebody disagrees or doesn't feel the same level of importance. Granted, I will admit perhaps it's a case by case basis, but until that time, depending on the subject and depending on the nature of it and depending on what people are trying to do, I think moreover is the intentions. Like when somebody calls me a soldier, I understand at least based on how they're delivering the message. I understand that they're not attempting to insult me unless they are, unless they're purposely and willingly doing it on purpose. Because we, as those of us that have earned our titles, Marine, sailor, airman, Coast Guardsman, soldier, that means something to us that not everybody else understands or shares. And for the average person to, just use a generic term like soldier, I understand they're not meaning it in an insulting way. So, and hopefully that makes sense to people. I do believe that there are people out there that just they found a sense of social currency in going above and beyond to be offended by every little thing, but for what purpose? And that's I think that's key. And Stace, please comment, let me know what you think. What is the overall purpose? What is the long arching overachieving goal of just being so obnoxiously offended? Like, what is the end state? Is it to get somebody fired? Is it to adversely affect somebody's life? Like if I accidentally misgender somebody, like, hey, good afternoon, miss, or good afternoon, ma'am, you know, pardon me, miss, pardon me, ma'am. And do I need to be fired? Do I need to lose my livelihood, my ability to provide for my family? I mean, do I need to have the IRS perform an audit on me? Because, I mean, that's kind of what I'm trying to say is these people that go out of their way to make such a fuss, what is the end goal? As far as the Club Q thing goes, Stace, I'm only slightly familiar with it. Um, all I can tell you is, as as a scholar of history, as somebody who's pursued college education, specifically with a background in security and whatnot, um, since we became humans and Well, yeah, since we became humans, we've always formed groups. We've always separated and segregated ourselves from somebody else, from another group. We've always formed groups or tribes or whatnot. We've always conflicted with one another. People have always found the need to go out of their way to do something to somebody else. Am I attempting to justify anything that happened at Club Q? No. My limited understanding is the individual involved had a history of emotional distress, had a mental health history that seems to apparently gone unnoticed. And it goes back to a bigger question I've always had, like, when is enough enough and when is enough not enough? Like, I would argue we don't need to keep psychoanalyzing criminals in jail to find out whether daddy didn't love him enough or mommy took the bottle away too soon. But at the same time, if this individual responsible for Club Q or the individuals responsible for any number of mass tragedies had a history of some sort of mental illness, with all of the study dedicated to mental illness, with all the destigmatization of mental illness, what happened? So I don't know. I don't. If you want to talk more on that, Stace, by all means, let me know. We can have that conversation. I can do some research on that. And for anybody else, if you're new to my channel, um, all I'm really trying to do is stimulate conversation and show that we're not red and blue, that we're probably all a little bit more purple, and that we can actually find more common ground, as Steven Crowder would say, than not. Because otherwise, if you pay attention, it just feels like there's too many people pushing really, really hard for division in this country. And I don't want to make I don't want to make the direct equation, but Rome wasn't built in a day, nor did it destroy itself overnight. And it wasn't destroyed by outside forces, it was destroyed from within. And they were, at the time, they were the greatest empire of their day. So, not that I think that we're an empire, but everything that's right about our country could be swept away if we don't protect it. So, I don't care about the likes. I don't care about the dislikes, the subscriptions, the notification bells. I just care about comments. I just want to have these conversations. And if you do leave a comment and get involved in the conversation, I appreciate it. And you're awesome. Till next time.